There's so many stories about the portal right now, the good, the bad. Everybody has their opinion on it. But let's dive into a real story about a real player and a real kid that's taken advantage of. His name is Max Hurleman. Played 4 years at Colgate. Graduated with a finance degree. Was he done? Nah. Did he transfer halfway through? He didn't. He went all the way through, graduated with the guys he came in with, and where did he go? Went to Notre Dame. Had an unbelievable year with Notre Dame. Loved the experience. Got a master's degree in finance. And what does he do? Oh, he just ends up signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he played his first season on the practice squad. And hopefully this year he'll make the 53-man roster. Max is a great kid. You'll enjoy this story. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. Thanks for watching Gridiron 1880. This is Game Plan U, the business of sports, and I'm Rob Thompson, your host. You know, the interesting thing for me is you're just one of those guys that I haven't talked to in a while that went through and did their 5th year somewhere else. So how did that come about? Was that a COVID year left over, or was that a redshirt year?
Yeah, that was a COVID year left over. My freshman year at Colgate was that COVID year. So I kind of knew from that moment that I wanted to go try to play, at the next level. So that was always in the back of my mind my entire time at Colgate. And, it obviously was unfortunate not to have a freshman season. But, having that extra year on the back end ended up being a blessing. So super, super thankful. There's good in everything,
There is. You may not see it at the moment. Did you feel like when you started at Colgate, was there this thought in your mind that, you were planning that 5th year all along, or were you like, let's see how this goes and maybe I could ride this thing out here?
I considered it, and I definitely, we had a ton of, after our senior season, the coaching staff was definitely adamant about recruiting my class back for a 5th year, a lot of us. And so it was almost like we were in high school again, and they were trying to recruit us to come back for another year because, it wasn't just me. There were a handful of us that were definitely considering other options, and you can't blame any of us, right, for wanting to kind of fulfill a dream and play at the highest level, at FBS ball as opposed to FCS. Some guys went for it, some didn't. But for me, a huge part of my decision was also the fact that I was going to be able to get another degree at Notre Dame, whereas at Colgate, there isn't really a graduate school. So that kind of weighed heavy on my decision as well. Because even, I chose to go to Colgate, I chose to go to Notre Dame. Academics was a huge part of both of those decisions.
Talk about the experience. I mean, were you prepared for it? I mean, high school to college is a huge jump to begin with.
Yeah.
Right. And what was your moment like? You're like, welcome to college, Division I college football. What was that like for you when you first came in?
Are you referring to Colgate?
To Colgate.
Yeah.
Yeah. To Colgate.
Man, I came in like most kids do, super confident, like I felt like in high school I was the man, and that was just going to continue to be an easy thing. And I remember our first year it was COVID and Patriot League football was kind of shut down. We played a couple spring games, but everything was just so aloof. It was hard to even call that a real season. So I guess I would say the start of my sophomore year, which would have been the 2021 season, we opened things up at Boston College. And I just remember one of my first handoffs of the game, and I was playing in the backfield. I didn't even time to look up from the handoff, and all of a sudden there were 2 pretty large human beings basically in my grill. No time to make a move, and I was right on my back. And I was like, okay, wow, this is big boy ball. Usually in high school I might be able to pull a rabbit out of my hat in that situation. There was no escaping.
There was no rabbit.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
No rabbit.
Yeah. So that was definitely that moment.
Yeah, no, that makes. I just remember that it was like these guys are like grown men. That's what they felt like. I felt like, right, just like a little kid, and these 23, 24-year-old guys they all look like they're 30 something.
Yeah, no, it is. They definitely looked like that. And I remember looking, because we had most of what I was familiar with was Patriot League type players. I'm like, okay, you see them on paper. We go to play Boston College, and even just before we get there, I'm looking at searching them up on Instagram and whatnot, and I'm showing my buddies like, uh, holy smokes, we're obviously confident, but like this should be fun, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and then you head out to Notre Dame,
Yeah.
and I'm just incredible. I'm sure it was just like a dream, and just kind of being in that program. Talk about that experience.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I think, even if you're not a student, no matter what season of life you're in, I think anyone should take a trip to South Bend, Indiana at some point in their life because it's an eye-opening experience. And just being able to live there for a whole year, um, I can definitely say that that 1 year had a huge impact on my life and the person I am today. And it changed me in a lot of good ways. Um, but the football part of it was incredible, right? Like, Colgate was awesome. I love my coaches. I love my teammates. Had an amazing time there. But playing at Notre Dame was just it was a different beast, and it was cool. For me, it felt like, wow, I'm really playing big boy football, and we're filling out stadiums every day and every weekend, and it was just a ton of fun. And the guys there are super cool. Got along with a bunch of the dudes. Still keep in touch with them. Coaching staff was awesome, and it was special. And entering a new place as a walk on, wasn't really familiar with how that territory was at Colgate because there technically is no true walk ons. Everyone has some sort of partial scholarship. Um, and so that was kind of I was in for a rude awakening. I knew as soon as I got there, I was like, wow, there's a clear hierarchy here, and I knew it was going to be an uphill battle, which I wasn't necessarily expecting.
Mm. What did you think about, besides the facilities, the brand name,
Yeah.
kind of the mystique with Notre Dame? What did you feel like the biggest difference in skill level, quickness, strength, and just the dudes, overall players? How big of a step up was it for you?
Yeah. So number one, I would say the offensive and defensive line are obviously a lot larger. Um, you know, probably a little more athletic. Not maybe not, but definitely bigger. And I would even say that ranged true in the skill positions where, and I say this to everyone, I think there are a handful of Colgate guys who could have found a role at a school, maybe not like Notre Dame, but out of UVA or Boston College, for example. Um, but the guys just pass the eye test a lot better. They have they're just a little rangier. They're a little lankier. And, I think, once, put the ball down and say, "Hike, let's go." Some of that doesn't matter anymore, but they're a lot more intimidating to the eye. And that length can be an advantage at times for sure. But I saw a lot of those guys and I was like, we don't really have this at Colgate. They maybe are close to being as capable, but just the eye test, the range, the length that some of these guys have, we didn't have anyone who looked like that. And one of my other Colgate teammates played his 5th year at Arizona, and he said the same thing. We don't really have rangy type looking athletes that, would be a dream or any college football recruiter would immediately say, okay, that's the kind of kid I want. Um, so that was a huge difference. Just the size of the guys at each positions, whether that be height, beef at the linebacker spot, et cetera. So that was a major difference. And the speed, slightly faster.
Yeah, yeah. I always said that as a coach or as a general manager, or through my career path, I said the same thing. There's a very thin margin as the levels as you go up, and the biggest margins are always in the inside guys.
Right.
Always,
No doubt.
right? If running a 40 and being fast is finite, right? It's just, if you're a fast guy that's quick and you can move and you can cover ground, or you're a QB that can make good decisions, you got a good arm, doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah.
Right. But the difference is always in those, once you get 6'5" and over, right? It's like 6'3" is kind of, but once you hit 6'4", 6'5", and those bodies are big and those guys can bend, right? And they can get off the ball. Those are hard guys to find.
No doubt.
There's
There's a
really
handful
hard
of
guys.
a handful of 6'8" guys at Notre Dame. I was like, whoa,
I saw those guys. I didn't think they moved very well. I thought some of your but that's that left tackle. I thought he was a little whatever. I don't know.
yeah,
You know, yeah, but he's a big dude. But I don't know if he could move that well. But still, 6'8". You could cover. You just have to stand there and kind of sink your hips a little bit, and you can make some
yeah.
plays. What did you feel like the overall, the power every day of getting up besides the gear? Because the gear is a whole different level at that side, right?
Yeah,
And the
sure.
resources. What did you
Yeah.
feel like as far as every day you get up? Was your thought process like, did it go toggle back and forth from I'm really grateful that I'm here, or holy cow, I really got to prove myself today? Like, where did you find that moment of, yeah, I think I proved myself and I'm good?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're asking, right? And I'm just super hyper competitive. And, when no matter how things would have went, I would have looked back and said, man, I'm so happy I got to throw on that gold helmet and and play for this awesome institution. But as soon as I got there, I knew that wasn't going to be enough. Um, and that was never really my intentions. And there are guys who do that, and that's what they want to do, and they're happy and they're at peace with that. But for me, I just started setting small goals for myself, and the first one was once I realized the hierarchy divide between walk on and scholarship player. I was like, okay, let's just get on the bus. Let's just get on the plane. And then slowly after that, I was like, okay, I can really be an impact player. Like, let's just impact the game in one way or another. And that quickly started happening, thankfully. But it was just setting small, stepping stool goals one at a time. And um, but to answer your question, you know, just just having my name on the roster wasn't really what I was looking for. I wanted to make impact on Saturdays. That's just what I kept saying. I want to impact the game on Saturdays. So that's where my head was.
So when you go back, you take a step back, and because I know you're just looking at, we're going to talk about the Steelers and what you're doing there,
Yeah.
and but to get to where you are now, you obviously had to have some support behind you, and people that really believe in you today, as they did when you were 10 years old or 8 years old playing
Yeah.
flag football or whatever, and kind of working your way up. Um, who was that? Who was the person that believed in you the most besides your parents? I know your parents, but who was that really believed in you the most? And did you ever say thank you to them?
Yeah. Yes. I try to give gratitude as much as I can to the people that support me, and obviously, yes, my parents are awesome. My parents have never told me that I can't. It's always you can go. Yes, yes, yes. But honestly, just my closest friends. I can credit a lot to my girlfriend, who I've had since high school. Um, just like I have a super tight, supportive inner circle who's just very supportive. And a lot of those guys are honestly my friends from Colgate, and some of which are kind of on that same path right now. One of them is doing a fifth year at UCF, one did a fifth year at Western Michigan, and they're kind of going through similar processes that I was last year. And, there's just a small eclectic of dudes who kind of at one point or another had the same vision, right? And so when you have a group of people who kind of are all striving towards the same goals, it's like we kind of support each other and say that, yeah, we can do this, even though it may seem irrational. Um, but if you don't believe it's possible, it's definitely not. And like, yes, in the back of my mind and being rational and logical thinker, did I understand that, wow, this could really be a big waste of time and me pursuing this? Yes, I knew that. But, um, you know, 30, 40 years down the line, uh, I would have looked back and been really upset with myself for at least not giving it a go, you know? So, um, yeah, family, friends, my girlfriend, um, they've all been super supportive.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. It gives you something to fight for every day
Right.
when you're
Right.
thinking about it. So now that you probably feel like you've been on a hamster wheel the last couple of years. You're just running and chasing and running and chasing.
Yeah.
And this is no different. A lot more stress on you now, right? And a lot more eyeballs on you now. You got the draft coming up, so they're going to be filling that roster back up again. Talk about where your head is right now. Coming off of last year with the Steelers, signed as a free agent, and you're finding your way off. You're, essentially in that hierarchy of practice, right?
Right.
And practice player, starter,
Yep.
vet. You've already learned that once at Notre Dame,
Yeah.
right? So how has that experience helped this experience now? Because it's very similar.
Yeah. It it is very similar. I would just say that you have to understand that every role in that organization matters. And if you look at it through that lens, like, man, I may not be, the guy who's scoring all the touchdowns on Sunday or getting interviewed by ESPN after the game. Like, if you look at it through a lens that my role is just as important as the quarterback of the team or the head coach, it can really give you a lot of peace and a lot of encouragement to like go do my role to the best of my ability. Um, and if you look at it through that lens and I do what I can to help this team win and how I operate this week is going to impact the result of Sunday. Um, you can have some pretty good self-motivation and encouragement. And when all those things happen and when the team keeps winning, some individual praise or props or glory will come from that. So, um, I just think, it's all about mindset and the perspective you look at things. And that's what I've try to do. Obviously I'm not comfortable, um, being a practice squad player. I want to be out there on Sundays. I want to make impact in the game on Sundays. Um, but the first step is just kind of, not being upset with my role, just trying to be the best I can at it.
What do you find the difference with the support staff, whether it's the strength and conditioning coaches, your position coach? How do you feel like they approach things differently from college to the NFL guys? Is there a big gap in difference on you feel like your relationship with them, or is it because college you become really good friends with it, especially the trainers, right? And the
Right.
strength and
Yeah.
conditioning guy. How is it? How do you feel your experience has been with the Steelers and in the NFL? Is there almost like you don't even really put that much into a relationship, or is it totally different?
No, I made some great relationships this year, and it's like anything, when you go to work or you go to school, go to the same place every single day. Um, you organically create relationships with these people and become friends. And um, that I wouldn't say any of that is any different. The one thing about the NFL though is that, you can create these relationships over a couple weeks and then all of a sudden you have to part ways with that person and you maybe never see them again. There's a lot more turnover in the NFL. And especially, even me, just within 1 year, there's a coaching change, right? So I'm going to have to deal with that. Whereas in college, especially at Colgate, I'm under the same staff for 4 years. So naturally, those relationships are a little bit stronger. But um, I would say there's really no difference in the development of relationships, whether that's with your coaches, the strength staff, the trainers. Because, like I said, when you're around the same people for many, many, many days in a row, those things kind of just happen naturally, and people are supportive of each other. Even the players, while we are competitively competing for kind of the same spots, and not everyone can be on the team. Guys just want to see other guys be successful and do well, which I think is pretty cool.
It is. It gets even better when you're further down the road too. But I'm gonna ask you a question. Take it back. Take a sip of water. Right, hydrate a little bit there.
Yeah, thanks.
Um, I'm gonna this is a two-part question, and the first part is really about maybe not your freshman year, but maybe your sophomore year. If you had to go back, because you kind of we spend so much time sitting around with our buddies and our teammates talking about the future,
Yeah,
right? Imagine if
yeah,
we could do this. Imagine if this was a little bit better. Where am I going to be? Who am I going to marry? Right? We daydream with our boys, especially our closest ones. Right? You share so much of each other.
right.
If you had to go back and really sit down with 18-year-old Max
Yeah,
and say, Max, everything is going to work out, dude. It's
yeah.
all going to work out, right? What would you say to yourself if you think about Max, if you think about the things you probably stressed out about the most, the things that were out of your control, whether it was, whatever that was, we all have our own anxiety and stress and things that we think about. If you had to go back and have that conversation with yourself, well, how would it go? How would that conversation go?
um, well, while I wouldn't change anything about the way things happened, um, I would say try to don't set any any ceilings on myself. And even though I mentioned earlier that I had this sort of irrational belief that I could do it, there was another part of me that would think logically and rationally, um, and it's good to couple those things together when you're shooting for goals, right? Because sometimes things can go awry, and you might need some sort of fallback. But um, I would just go back and tell myself, man, it's not that serious. Like, you're so young, and even now, like, I can make a huge mistake and mess up whatever I have going for me. But like, I still have so much time, and that's the blessing that I had at 18 is you have time. Don't spend time stressing or dwelling about things, and just have fun. Don't complain, which I don't think I'm a huge complainer, but like, just enjoy the time you have with your boys, you know, and don't take it all too serious. That's what I would say.
Great advice.
Yeah.
And you're so right about the complaining part because no
Yeah.
one likes a complainer,
No.
right? You got
No.
you got the guys. It's the guys that are sitting in the locker room, the guys that are always negative about things. They're the victim.
Yeah.
It could have been an injury. The coach doesn't like them.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. Those are the same guys you go on later on in their life, in their career. They're the same way,
Yep. Yeah.
right? It's everybody else's fault and whatever it may be. But well, always me, or the negative Nancy, or we used to call them locker room lawyers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of those things. So the second part of this, and as you're obviously a very smart guy, and you got your stuff together, and you start thinking about that next step. If you have to fast forward, Max, another 5-10 years from now, how are you using this? Well, to me, I went through it, COVID years and all that leading into this, and I always thought that NIL was the permission to student athletes to explore their careers without any guardrails, right? So, and a big piece of that is entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Right. So solopreneurship, entrepreneurship. How do I monetize Max?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of, like, Max may not have been really into it at the time. He's like, I just want to play football. I'm not even worried about kind of who's going to pay me $50 for the nutritional place, right?
Yeah.
In Hamilton. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't have time for that right now, although it's kind of interesting. But I think it allowed student athletes to start thinking differently than for a career path.
Sure.
So, all right. So teeing that up, where you are today, how are you thinking about using this moment that you're in right now? Because now you have the permission to explore your career path, whatever is next, right?
Yep.
Whether it's going to work for somebody, whether it's going to be a startup, or whatever you're going to do with it, depending on how the next 5 to 10 years turns out for you, right? What's your thought process as you kind of sit there and say, okay, I got lift today, I got this, I'm dreaming about playing, but what if, right?
Yeah.
I got this other pathway that I could do at the same time. What are you doing, and what do you see happening for you as you kind of explore that career pathway above and beyond using sports, using this moment to kind of give you that voice out there?
Yeah. I mean, you leveraging the position I'm in is obviously a huge advantage that I think I have, and I'd be an idiot not to take advantage of it, right? Like, even just having the Colgate across my chest, I thought was an amazing advantage, which it is. And then now couple that with the Notre Dame, and then also the NFL Shield, which is maybe one of the biggest brands in the world, right? So just being able to use that to leverage myself into certain rooms that maybe I wouldn't have access to otherwise, and things I've kind of started doing now is while thinking about the future, and God knows what I'll be doing, and I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I can use this time to try and figure that out. Just using the network that I'm in by default to kind of reach out to certain people, and whether that's in Pittsburgh or in my hometown, or whether that's in New York City or Chicago, where Notre Dame and Colgate have huge huge networks, just to get in rooms and get in front of people and say, hey, super curious about what you do, about your industry. Love to stop by your office and hang out for an hour and learn a little more. Um, and if I walk out of the room saying, man, I would never want to do that, I still think it's a win because I add another person to my Rolodex and I say, hey, can you lead me in a different direction? Do you know another guy or another woman? So I think just leveraging all of the brands that I have next to my name, um, is a big advantage that I have, and I'm trying to do that now. And what brought me to that realization is just this is kind of the first off season I had where I feel like I have nothing to do. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have class, I don't have mandatory winter workouts. Um, yeah, what am I doing with myself? I'm sitting at home watching Game of Thrones. I'm like, I feel like a bum. Uh, you know, let's do something productive. So I've done a few of those things, and I think it'll be beneficial in the long run to plant those seeds now.